without a shadow of a doubt, I know that the universe and God had a plan for us, right? Which is crazy because you guys will hear this story, but there's no other way that this could have happened.
No other way. Welcome to another Kamohai and Tristyn talk story time.
Aloha.
Okay. This time's a little bit different, right? We are going to talk about us, where we came from, grassroots.
Grassroots, yeah. I think we've given over the years a very brief overview of kind of like what directly led us to real estate, but we've never dug real deep into our lives that were separate prior to us meeting each other and kind of what led up to that. Right?
Yeah.
So I think what we hoped...
The skeletons in the closet, we're letting them out.
I mean, I think this for... I was telling Tristyn earlier, like this is probably the most nervous, but also excited I've ever been about doing one of these things because there are some things that we're going to talk about today, which are genuine, authentic stories that are hard to talk about. They're hard to talk about because, I mean, everybody cares about what other people think about them, right?
And we just decided to not care anymore.
Exactly.
And
right.
we've been told, I mean, we've briefly talked about it to friends and, recently started sharing a little bit. And the feedback is like, you guys need to let down the wall and genuinely start sharing your story, where you came from, what you've overcome, whatever, in hopes that it'll inspire people because the people that have heard it or do know have given that type of feedback. And so we keep getting nudged and nudged and nudged and nudged. So
we're here today. I mean, in the end, I think it's normal for people to worry about what other people think. I think that's a normal human trait that everybody does. But there is a time where you get to a place in your life and you're like, you cannot feed into that.
no,
right?
It's just going to hold you back.
Exactly. It holds you back. So you have to really concentrate on speaking your truth, being authentic, and then the people that vibe with you when you share that message, those are your people.
And
the other
all
people,
that matters.
That's all right. They weren't meant to be with you.
Right.
Right? So
1000%. So we're not talking about how we got into real estate because I feel like we share that all the time. We're talking about life before real estate. And we're not even talking about how, you owned retail stores and I was in the nonprofit behavioral health sector. We're talking about even before that.
Before that. Yeah. Let's go. Are you excited? Scared? Nervous?
All of the above. It is what it is. It's my story. It's my truth.
Yeah.
And same for you.
Same for me. I hope that this gives a better understanding of the kind of stuff that we've been through in our lives and the skills that we've picked up along the way that have helped us get to where we are today, and that we inspire the shit out of some people.
Let's inspire the shit out of people.
Let's go. So you want me to go first?
Yeah,
okay.
I want you to
I will go first. So I know we have talked a little bit about my family and growing up, but I think that's the best and easiest place to start. So I am a native Hawaiian. My family has been here 4 generations. We are of and from this place. I feel like my story starts with obviously my dad and mom, but my dad was one of 11 children. One of 11 children who grew up very, very poor. I would say in poverty. Yeah. Like I've heard stories of my dad literally having to rummage to get food when he was 5 years old, right? And they grew up in a 900 square foot house across the street from Kailua Beach. And my dad persevered. Like his story is really a story of perseverance.
Your dad's an amazing man.
Right. And he worked his whole life to then give us as his children anything and everything that we could have ever wanted, because he didn't want his children to go through what he had to go through when he was growing up. So he worked his butt off. He ended up going to school, graduated from college. He ended up getting a job at the bank, worked his butt off there, became an executive senior vice president, and then a Bishop Estate trustee, and then a Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation trustee.
He's
so
a highly successful businessman in Hawaii.
I mean, we got to get him on the podcast to share his story, honestly.
My goodness,
Yeah.
yes.
But so in that process, he had us, right? And when he had me, we were like just getting over the like poor, I would say, like level in life, right? Like he had started working at the bank. He was starting to make some money. I would say we're middle class, and my dad wanted to give us everything. And the way that my dad showed us he loved us was through things. Like money, giving us things that we asked for, taking us on vacations. A lot of the times he would do it to the detriment of the family. Like they may not even have enough money to really do it, but they would do it. He would do it anyway, because he had this immense feeling of wanting us to have everything.
He wanted to give you guys what he never had.
Exactly. And I mean, for that, like I had an unbelievable upbringing and childhood, and was always taken care of and always got more than I probably deserved. Mm-hmm. Right. One of the things that happened through that was that I never really had to work hard for very many things. Growing up, I would get what I wanted when I asked for it. And I mean, yes, I was a spoiled kid, and all of us were, all of the children were.
Yeah.
And that paired with the fact that I had, and this is going to sound really bad, but I have always been really good at everything that I've ever tried to do.
No, it's very annoying because you make everybody else, not everybody else, speak for myself, feel bad about themselves because you do things with such ease. And so it's annoying.
Yeah. So, dude, I even
things just come a lot easier.
Right. I even cringe saying it, but
it's the truth.
Right.
It's just
it was.
What it is.
So I'll start something. I get super good at it really, really fast, and it's fairly easy for me.
But
right?
It's your genetics. I mean, you're a very gifted, intelligent human being.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know. I guess, yes, that is
Just
true.
Receive the compliment.
But what happened because of that is it was really a blessing and a curse for me, right? So I would excel at things, but what happens is I get very bored super easily, and I'm always searching for something else because I never feel fulfilled. And that's literally the story of my life. I start something, get really good at it, get bored, stop doing it, do something else. And so eventually I don't know, I was always searching for something. I think that's like the major thing for me.
Never satisfied.
Right, never satisfied. And I always wanted more, and I always wanted that feeling of more.
It's an entrepreneur struggle right there.
Right, it is. And I think that as entrepreneurs, and I didn't know this back then, there are two ways that you can go really about that, right? You can lean into that, and you can focus and put your energies and efforts into things that are positive, or you go down the other path and you put that energy into negative things, right? And somewhere in my life, I made a decision to go down the negative path, right? And it started with just like hanging out with friends and partying and having fun. but it ended up turning into a problem.
Right.
Right. And so in high school, I just partied a lot. I went to school, but I was really there just for the party, and ended up getting involved with not just alcohol, but also drugs. And for a very long time, I went down that path. And that was how I searched to be fulfilled. And like, there's no good excuse or rhyme or reason for it. But once I was in that cycle, it was a very bad, vicious, detrimental cycle. I did nothing productive.
Right.
And I took, and I just went down that path, you know?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, along with that lifestyle comes consequences, right? And so I started getting in trouble with the law. It started with a DUI, and then it progressed from there. And so for a good 10 years of my life on that road of destruction, really led me to a place where I was losing my freedom and could potentially lose my freedom for a long time. Right. And so I found myself sitting in front of a judge, and the judge giving me two options. And the judge basically said, hey, Kamohai, if you don't get your act together, your next step is jail for a really long time. Or I'll give you an opportunity to go to this rehabilitation center. You're going to stay there for 2.5 years. That was crazy in my mind, but that's your other option. And so I was like, you know what?
I don't have another option.
I don't have another option. I'm going to go down this path. But I ended up doing that. And I mean, we can get into what happened once I did that. But I think it's just important to like briefly recap on the fact that I had put myself into a situation where there was really no other option. I mean, I could have chose to go to jail and done the exact same thing if I wanted to.
Not many people would choose that, I
Right,
feel like.
right. But I made a decision in my mind that I wanted something more, and not even that, that I was meant for greatness. Like I knew it without a shadow of a doubt in my soul that my life was meant to do something more and have more impact. Like I knew that deep down within me. And in that moment, I decided to persevere. And that's what I did. I worked my ass off for a really long time to actually funnel and channel my skills into the right healthy choices
Something
and decisions.
productive.
Right. So I in the past I had channeled that energy to negative things. I then decided to channel it to a more positive place. And I mean, we can talk about who I met at that treatment center, but this will maybe turn into a love story as well.
It's going to, because that's
crazy.
just how the stories collided. But
Right.
so, how do I pick up from that?
I don't know.
I know. I can relate that growing up. I think, once I became a teenager and then was a young adult, I've always had that similar feeling or instinct that I was supposed to be doing something bigger than I was. I was meant for something more. So I can relate to you on that sense. But I also think growing up, I saw my parents were very successful as well. My grandparents were very successful. Upper middle class, I would say, both entrepreneurs. My grandparents and my parents were both entrepreneurs. So I saw that's all I saw growing up. I didn't witness anything. I never witnessed my parents clocking in or clocking out for work. I only witnessed them waking up, taking care of us, and going to run their business and work their ass off and then come home and still work, you know?
Yeah.
So like they were married to their job and they were full operators,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, they were operators in the business.
Yes.
Yep.
But they worked for themselves ultimately. So that was ingrained in me from day one. I always knew that I didn't want to work a job, that I wanted to be the one to employ other people and to be in control and be the owner of the business. So along with seeing that growing up, I also saw drug addiction and alcoholism. So both of my parents are recovering drug addicts. So I didn't have a normal childhood like most kids have. I saw them work and then I saw them on trucks. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they were a different breed of human because although that they were using drugs, they were still very highly, so they're like the worst kind of addict.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Because they were super high functioning. They still were running a business. They still were paying their bills. All of my brother and I needs, you know, like food, shelter, clothing, and attention, it was still there. It was just a little different from other people's.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I grew up with that. And then I don't even know how old I was, but they got arrested and they went to jail. And my brother and I went to go live with I'll never forget that morning too. Like I was young, but I knew what was going on. And I remember the morning that they got arrested very distinctly. My mom, he used to work all night and stay at the office. And so like they kind of worked in shifts. Like, so my dad would stay home with the office. She would still come home every morning and get us ready for school. So that's what I mean by being like still present, but
Totally.
not in a normal way.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So, that morning I was sleeping and it was really early. I want to say it was like 5 a.m. maybe 5:30. And I heard people outside the house and my brother went and opened the door and it was a SWAT team fully charging into our home. My dad was asleep. And then I remember like maybe 30, 40 minutes into the raid, my mom came home because she was going to take us to school, but she had already known because they were following her home. And so I just remember my dad sitting at the dining room table saying, calling my Nana, and I'm going to get emotional because my Nana is so special to me.
Yeah.
Calling my Nana, telling her to come get my kids because the police were there. And so I have always felt safety and security in my grandmother because she was always there. Mm-hmm. She was like that constant force that no matter what was going on, like she was solid.
Yeah.
And she always showed like the love that Jesus talks about in the Bible. It was like her. She just loved us.
Right.
And so she came and picked us up, and that's when my entire world changed because my parents went to jail for quite a while, and this whole process started. And I remember seeing my parents on the news and my house getting raided. So like my whole world flipped upside down for my brother and I.
Mm-hmm.
So like I remember not going to school for a while because I didn't want to face it. And I think that's where my conflict avoidance like started.
Right.
Because I didn't want to deal with stuff. So I just didn't go.
Right.
And I did the whole thing, visited them in prison, all of it. My mom and my dad, my mom got the choice to go to treatment or go to prison just like you.
Mm-hmm.
And so she went to treatment. My dad was offered the same thing, but the plea deal that they were offered was only one of them could go because, as you know, Staten Island Treatment Center is the facility that we're talking about. They have rules. You can't have a married couple in the same facility,
right.
just like you really can't have brothers and sisters. It just creates conflict, and it's hard to do anything to resolve any issues independently in a therapeutic setting when you
Yep.
have family. It just gets weird. So my dad said, send my wife and I will take the time.
Right.
And I get emotional over that because my parents always loved each other
Right.
so
they were
much.
together constantly. And
They were almost codependent and unhealthy, but
Right.
like you could tell at the root of everything that they were best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And that's never left. And so even through all of this chaos, I feel like I've always been ingrained to find the positive in things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always found that my parents were in love till today.
Yep.
Till today, they're still in love with each other. And gives me hope for our marriage.
I mean, yeah, if they can do it, we better be able to do it.
Yeah. Where was I going with that?
Yeah, no, that they're still in love with each other today.
Oh, yeah. So my mom went to treatment. And that's where she, you know, was very similar to you, where she was the client and then she had an opportunity to become the counselor. And so they hired her on and she became, you know, the chief operating director, whatever her title was, for many, many years, like over 20 years. She was there, you know, creating the change that she created for herself through being given an opportunity to try again.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, then my dad came out. And then once my dad came out, my mom had to go in. So
right.
my mom
weekends, right?
Weekends. So my dad came out and then my mom went in on weekends. So, I mean, I don't even know how long this happened, but throughout that whole time, I still had my grandparents and some type of normalcy in my life. And, you know, I got into trouble as a kid, but I think it was during that period where my whole world got flipped upside down that I made the decision to take a different route.
Mm-hmm.
Because majority of the time, statistically, children in those types of situations,
they go down the same path.
They go down the same path. They also don't see marriages sustain such trauma.
Normally.
Usually, husbands and wives and families that get ripped apart in that way remain apart. They
Right.
don't usually come back together. And I see God working in my family's life throughout this whole time. And I think that's where I began my own relationship with a higher power because I didn't have anybody else.
Right.
So yeah, I made the decision to do something different. I knew I wasn't going to be a drug addict, even though it was in my blood. I made a choice to go down this road instead of that one because I know where that one leads.
Right.
I've
saw
been
it
there.
firsthand.
I was a victim of
Right.
it. And yeah, so...
So I love that. I think right after we share this next part, I have a question to ask you about, you know, that. And then, I mean, obviously you can ask me anything, but I want to reflect on potentially like what are the things that helped us in those situations, right? Like there's always lessons. Like there's things that we learn throughout life. It's our job to recognize what those things are. So now looking back, we can talk about what the things that we learned going through those experiences and how they've helped us moving forward. But I want to just touch on really the story, how it continues and how we met and how without a shadow of a doubt, I know that the universe and God had a plan for us, right? Which is crazy because you guys will hear the story, but there's no other way that this could have happened.
No other way.
Unless God had a hand in it, right?
Right.
And so I think that's why we're so passionate about understanding and knowing that we are meant for greatness and we will achieve greatness. But so Tris talked about her mom going to that treatment center. Just so happens, right? This is like 20.
This is a lot of years before.
A lot of years before. And when I got that decision from the judge where I'm either going to prison for a long time or I can go to this rehabilitation place, treatment center. I decided to go to that treatment center. Guess what treatment center that was?
Sand Island. Good old Sand Island.
It was the same treatment center that Tristyn's mom, my mother-in-law, went to and was the executive director at. So I went to this treatment center, and as I was telling you guys earlier about the fact that when I put my mind to something, I get really freaking good at it really quick. When I went to this center, the center, after 3.5 months, recognized something special in me. And they literally said to me, we want you to come and work in the office and help people that were in your position when you were coming in here. So I got hired on by the treatment center after 3.5 months in there to come and work and train to become a counselor and start teaching people how to do what I was doing. And so I did that. Eventually, I had my own group of 11 guys that I would counsel one-on-one, and we'd talk story, and I'd give them tools to help them make these better decisions in life. But wouldn't you know that at my desk in the office, the person that sat right across the way from me was none other than
my mother.
Your mother.
My mother.
Right. And so over time, your mother and I became really good friends. She was my boss, but we also became really, really good friends. And I still remember the first time that Tristyn walked into our office, and I'll let her tell you why she was there. But Tristyn walked in, and I looked over to my coworker and I said, "Who is that?" and he quickly hit me and was like, "Don't even think about that. That's the boss's daughter."
Do you remember what I was wearing?
I don't remember what you're wearing. But I do remember
the story better.
I know. I do remember getting told that she's off limits. Don't even think about it. And honestly, at that time, I didn't buy into it, but I did kind of pull back a little bit. But what was your experience from that?
I think I poured into education too, because I felt like that was my route to do something bigger and better with my life. Because like I said, I figured out that I wasn't going to go down that path. So now I need to put all energy into this path. And I didn't I knew entrepreneurship, but I thought like you still have to go to school and use your degree, and that's what you use in conjunction with entrepreneurship. So I was just using the information and the skill set that I had. And so I went straight from high school, and straight from high school, no break, straight into college. And I got a psychology degree. And my first day of college was my first day actually working for my mom. And so I was just like working for her part-time after college. And I was smoking a lot of weed at that time. So, I mean, even though I chose a different path, I feel like I was pretty high functioning too. So I could smoke weed and be a truant from high school and still get a 4.0 GPA. And, school came easy for me. So I tested those boundaries a little bit, but I still knew I didn't want to. So that was when I started working, honestly, at the facility. And then I eventually, a couple years into getting my degree, started working for my father. My father needed help. He was venturing into the nonprofit world and doing more counseling, behavioral health counseling services, because the credit repair industry started more rules and red tape, and so it was dying, and he needed help. So I went over and started working for my dad. And then I finished my degree, and I went straight into grad school. because my goal was to be a licensed counselor. So you need to get your master's degree. So I
Right.
went straight into that. And that is when I said, I need to get hours at an internship and at a practicum. And what better way to do that than to do it at a substance abuse facility where your mom is the boss?
Right. She can sign off on all your hours. You don't necessarily need to go the whole time. Just
so-
joking.
I couldn't do it at my place of employment. I had to do it somewhere else. So that's where I chose. And so she, I came in during a set schedule with her. She had me do certain things. Sure enough, when I was at the facility doing my hours, I would sit at her desk. And guess whose desk is right across from my mom's desk? So we would just stare at each other.
For a while.
I actually remember the first time I noticed you was we would sit outside of me and my mom were sitting outside of the office in like that rock garden smoking area.
Yep.
And you were doing phone monitoring or something. And you were leaning against a railing and I said, Mom, who is that? So it's funny how we both like said that. And then she went on to tell me who you were, that, who your family was. She basically served you up on a very silver platter.
Thanks, Mom.
And said that you were a good catch. And so I slid into the DMs, which was my first time ever doing that.
Slid into the DMs. And I responded. And it's so crazy because I still remember our first date. Mm-hmm. And I took you out to this place that I thought you were going to be thoroughly impressed. Like, dude, you guys, this place it's a members only club.
It's a very beautiful spot.
It's a beautiful spot here on Oahu. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take her there. She's going to be so impressed. And it's going to be a great time. We sit down and come to find out that you're also a member at that club.
Yep.
And you had been for a really long time.
You had met your equal.
I had met my equal. But anyway, guys, we talked for like 3 hours that night. I think we like basically laid everything out on the table almost.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't into, and so this is also a very vulnerable thing that I don't tell many people, but I was married before.
Right.
I was young and very stupid. And I got married at a very young age, thought I could change somebody. And he was an alcoholic and abusive. And so that didn't work out. And so I think going into this date, I wasn't interested, and nor have I ever been interested in just dating. I'm pretty sure of myself when I know that I want something and I know that there might be opportunity, I go after it. And so we kind of had it was like, this is who I am. This is what I want. These are my morals. These are my values.
We were very, very clear because
you were the same.
I was the exact same way. I had been through a lot of life.
Right.
And I was at a place where I wanted what I wanted. And I'm the same way. Usually get what I want. But I had I had matured a lot at that point.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, I still had some maturing to do, but I knew that I wanted something long-term, that I wanted to get married, we talked about kids, like everything on the first date.
We talked about like husband and wife roles too.
Like
do you think
wild.
that like I should do all the cooking? But it didn't feel forced though.
No, not at all.
It was like super organic and it was just flowing.
Yeah. And so we literally hung out almost every day after that.
Every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
And a short
2
time
years
later, right? 2 years later, we got married.
Got pregnant 1 month after being married.
That's literally a story in itself. But yeah, so I mean, you guys can hear there was other forces at play, really, when it comes down to it. And from that point, you guys know the story. I had a retail store. You started Kokua, and then our story getting into it. So that 30 minutes that we just talked, we kind of laid out you know,
where we came from,
and some of those experiences. And we hope that people can look at where we are now, and we can talk a little bit about that too, to give some perspective. But where we came from was a very different place, right?
Right.
And what I would hope to convey, the message that I would love to convey by sharing this story, is that it doesn't matter where you are right now. It doesn't. It does not at all. You can be down and out with nothing. And I'm talking about 10 years later, we are in a very different place, right? And if you decide to use your energy and put it in the right vehicle and down the right direction, then you too can change the trajectory of your life, right? So I would want to know, what do you think those experiences gave you that helped you get to this place that we're at now?
The power of choice. I think that every single human being, regardless of circumstance, has a choice on how they want to move forward. I feel like a lot of things and obstacles were in our place, and the deck was stacked against us to obviously different situations,
right?
and scenarios, but what would have been the easier path, to keep going down, repeated what you saw growing up and what because that's what's comfortable, or to pivot and make a choice to do, what might feel harder, and it is harder, but the change and almost like the glory is on the other side of that. So the power of choice and really leaning into that. And I think a solid support system was monumental in my life, even though the situation sucked. I still had a foundation of family, and I think that was monumental. So, and that doesn't mean that it has to be family, but I just think having a solid support system that can give you some consistency, because I think human beings are creatures of habit, and we thrive from structure. And even it's hard as entrepreneurs because we don't really have a lot of structure. Our worlds are very
All over the place.
is so different.
Right?
But if you're able to integrate some consistency in your daily structure, I think that's where we actually thrive. And I think that's what creates healthy habits, healthy mindsets, and healthy emotions, whatever that looks like for you. I think was critical for me to maintain through those traumatic years.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I feel like for me, I feel like choice does have a major thing to play in it, right? Like I have a very obsessive personality, and if I choose to put those characteristics into the wrong thing, it's very easy for me to get sucked down a path that way, right?
Yeah.
And on the other hand, that can be my greatest attribute. Right. Being obsessive about something, because I get hyper focused, I gain clarity fairly easy, and I am willing to do it at whatever cost, right? And so if you cognitively and intentionally make the effort to put that into something healthy, the sky's really the limit. Like, there is literally no limit. And I think that because I came from a place that was at the bottom of the barrel, like I literally had only two options: to continue and be in prison, right? Or like make a conscious effort and change and make a choice to do something different. Then And that's what I did. And this is where we ended up. But I think what's important to note here is that that's where I feel my story began. And that is the point that I can look back on 11 years ago. And it's taking me all of that time to get here, right? And so baby steps. I made little decisions at that time, and they weren't anything like crazy, but it was just one foot in front of the other and getting through and making right decisions consistently. Small decisions that built my self-confidence, that put me on the right trajectory. And 11 years later, because I think a lot of people just see, over the last 3, 4, 5 years, and they're like, oh my gosh, you guys, you're crushing it. You've come so far. Like, look at you.
But I've come, but they don't see how far you've actually come.
Exactly. And it starts from that day that I made that choice long before I met you.
Yep.
And so, I mean, it's powerful.
I think the burden that every human being carries is different, and the shadow that hovers over them is different. But like you said, it's that choice and that baby step. And I think a huge piece that this journey just over 2022 that I've been on has been a journey of loving yourself and self-development. And I want to share that no matter of the growth that you've made so far and the achievements that you've made so far and how far you've come from, this traumatic little, I think I was like 6 or 7, I don't know,
young,
girl whose parents got arrested and all of this trauma and trouble. And then up until now, the success I've achieved, it doesn't mean that the growth stops.
Right.
And that the journey of truly, the journey within is honestly one of the ones that's most important. And it's one of the ones that will hold you back from the greatness that you're destined for or you're being called to do if you aren't willing, able, and just take that next step inward so that you can be the best version of yourself. Because the version that got me as a child to, this point isn't the same version of me that's going to get me from this business entrepreneur, real estate investor to the next journey of where we're going. So that ties into like mindset and all of that and how critical that is. But I mean, that the growing and the change and the self-development never stops, and it's not supposed to. Yeah,
100%. And I think too, you have to, and what I had to do was really, it does come back to mindset, but it's really perspective too, right? Like I would say I embraced all of those bad decisions and situations and things that I went through.
Yeah.
And use those things as motivation. And guess what, you guys? Nothing in this real estate world that I'm coming up against is anything close that I haven't already overcame in my past life.
Right.
Like it's Manini. Like nothing is, right? And so I think that a lot of times people that are in some fucked up situations will choose to see those as fucked up situations. Right. And I get it, because when you're in it, it's hard, right?
It doesn't feel good.
And it doesn't feel good. And there might not be a light at the end of the tunnel. But guess what? If you can learn to embrace those things, and they really become things that you can leverage, they become your strongest assets, right?
Yeah.
And you use that and that perspective and build off of that stuff. You know what I mean? Like
I say that all the time.
Sky's the limit.
I feel like people that go through things or weren't given an upper hand at life, never had an option, their upbringing sucked, whatever it is that they've gone through, they feel like they can't achieve certain things because of that.
Right.
And it's actually the opposite. it's the choosing to put the lens on where, because I have gone through this and I carry this trauma or I carry this burden and I'm healing from it, it actually makes me more equipped to be successful at X, Y, and Z, because nothing builds character like experience.
And life experience.
Life
Exactly.
experience. Because I mean, in my in the nonprofit world, when we were accepting interns from graduate schools, and they're trying to get hours to be counselors, and how do you relate to people but through experiences? And that's really how you're able to build rapport and trust. A lot of same principles that go to marketing and talking to sellers.
Right.
And when you're trying, I remember trying to coach and mentor one of the interns, but she was so young and she was very sheltered growing up. She lived a very great life, like all great things, but she could not relate. So
Right.
she was really struggling in how to help people and connect during sessions because she lacked any type of life experience. So all that to say, it doesn't have to be a negative. Again, it's a positive, and you can use it to your advantage.
Yeah. It's a full-on perspective flipper. Yeah, big time. So that was kind of cool. I mean, very vulnerable moments.
Yeah.
But I feel good about sharing that because, dude, honestly, I know that there's people out there that think that they're destined to just be what they're told they have to be, right?
Yeah.
And because of this, just what you were saying, because of this circumstance, or because I chose to do this, or because I'm in all of this debt, there is no way out. Right. There's no way out, or I'm only going to be able to get so far. Mm-hmm. And I just want to stress to people how false that is.
Yeah.
Right? It literally can be used as a jump starting point to really help you move in the other direction, right? And so, I mean, where are we now? We literally were just
talking about it this morning.
Talking about it,
Well, in 2022, so far, what's the date today? November. We're in November of 2022. We bought just this year $10 million worth of real estate.
Right.
And of that 10 million, we're keeping 8 of it, I think.
$8,500,000 are assets that we're holding.
It's wild.
In 2022. So literally going from probably the worst decisions I could have ever made in my life to owning 8 million plus in 1 year of real estate.
All because of what?
I mean, it literally comes down to a couple of things, I feel like. One is we freaking chose the right vehicle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Real estate is the way to build wealth. I feel like that is the first and most important thing.
Yeah, it's the industry that produces the most millionaires, for
right.
sure.
So I think it's that, but it also takes a very special person to succeed at real estate, right? And I think I'm lucky as hell because I have a rad partner. I don't know if I would have chose or been as successful in this real estate space without you. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
We have very complementary skills, and the things that I find passion and draw passion from and love to do,
I don't.
You don't, and vice versa.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I know that has a big part to play, but all of these life experiences that I have been through, that you have been through, have really shaped us into the people that are I'm going to put my mind to something and I'm going to do whatever it takes for however long it takes.
Right.
With potentially not seeing anything
for a while,
for a long time, because I trust and I have faith and I know that I'm moving in the right direction.
Right.
And I approach every single day with that in the forefront of my mind.
Yeah.
right? And then it's about our willingness to educate ourselves and to spend money on education and to surround ourselves with people that we want to be like and lean on that circle that has allowed us to find the little success that we have, because honestly,
it ain't nothing.
We're at the freaking very beginning.
It ain't nothing.
This is the very start. Like we're so babies in this,
I know.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's a combination of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. What would you think?
I feel like when we initially decided to get into real estate, I didn't think too much into it. I just knew, because that yearning for something more was still there. And I thought, you know, that nonprofit behavioral health, being that business owner, was going to quench that like thirst. But it didn't, because we were financially struggling. And I came to the realization that I was still tied to a job. And maybe I loved that vehicle, but I might need a different car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I might need a different car, but that doesn't mean that I needed to leave that one. So once we got in, I just blindly, because we needed money and because I think almost subconsciously real estate was in my family. And then at that point, like something just clicked where it was like, I felt enough pain to want to bring about change.
Yeah.
And if there's no pain and there's no discomfort, you're not going to change.
Right.
And that's why a lot of people stay in what's comfortable, because it doesn't hurt enough.
Right.
And I think that I'm a very emotional creature.
I think, yeah, definitely. And I think I am too.
I think I'm a very emotional creature, and it can be both a positive and a negative. And it's choosing to dive into the positive part of it, meaning when I feel excited or passionate about something, like just run with it. And that's what we did with real estate.
Yeah.
And I didn't overthink it. I just followed the directions that I was told, almost like I said, like I was ignorant, because I didn't ask the questions or I didn't overanalyze something. I just took the action. And I think that's where you and I balanced each other out, because you were asking all the questions and you were analyzing everything. Yep. And now it's just funny how things reverse, because, you know, now I'm like asking all the questions and overanalyzing, and you're like, let's just go.
Yeah.
But
I think it is neat how that has,
the dynamics
has kind of flipped around.
The pancake has flipped.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we're, like I said, we're in the very beginning of our journey.
So what does the next 5 years look like? Because the last 5 years of real estate have been monumental. Like from starting from nothing, having not so good couple of first deals, to then finding success where we're making six figures on deals, getting out of debt, you know, creating a small rental portfolio, implementing marketing. And we've done that in the last 5 years. I think 2021, we did 17 deals. 2022, we're looking at 25 right now. I'm sure you'll buy another one.
At least a couple more.
Before the end of the year. So what does the next 5 years look like for us?
The next 5 years, I think like a brief overview is like, we have talked a lot about this, but like technically in the business, like strategy wise, I feel like we have learned our limits and what we want out of the fix and flip space.
Yes.
We know what we can handle and what we want to handle and what that looks like in our business. And what it comes down to is we want more passive assets.
Yeah.
Right? And so
I want more cash flow every single month.
Cash flow. And that's what it comes down to. So our focus has been, and we have already started implementing this over the last year.
Yeah.
We have moved into wanting to create assets that generate cash flow, holding things long-term in the short-term rental space and long-term rental space, potentially mid-term rental space,
right?
However we can generate it,
right?
And really put our focus on buying and holding assets
Right.
and scaling back fix and flip. So what we totally understand is that fixing and flipping is a super active job. Like, we got into real estate so we can, and I think this happens to a lot of people. You get into real estate because you want to buy your time back.
You want financial freedom.
You want financial freedom.
More money, yeah.
So, but fix and flip really becomes another job. It's a very active thing.
It's a very high stress, high risk
High
job.
risk, high stress, like all of the things,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so we wanted to, over this last year, get to a place where we no longer had to flip.
We want to flip.
We want to flip. We flip because we are passionate about it, because we love helping people, because we love seeing transformation. But we're not doing because we have to. We're doing it because we're choosing to. Our passive income portfolio, the cash flow that we bring in, allows us to live the life that we want to live. And so changing that focus has been very intentional this year. And I think over the next 5 years, what we're going to do is move even harder into that space, buying deals through creative finance that we're going to hold long term,
Right.
and bigger multifamily deals, right? We're already looking at them. We're already buying some.
Yeah.
And I think the number one thing is, and I didn't touch on this earlier, but aside from, because I do think a lot of people get into real estate for the money, right? Like, people see, oh, you can make a lot of money in real estate, and that's what draws a lot of people to real estate.
Right.
But I would argue to say that that's not enough.
No.
Like, if you're in it just for the money, then you may make some money, but it's going to be fleeting and it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer that you have to have purpose attached to why you want to do something. And so we talk about how we're so lucky because we found a vehicle. My wife's yawning right now. You got to put that in there, Nico. This is how important I am to her. But anyway, what I'm saying is we always have said that we're so freaking lucky because we found a vehicle that can marry our purpose and create generational wealth and wealth, right?
And I think we're just trying to create that impact, and by showing other people that were like us, that wanted more and knew that there was more out there, that there is more out there, and you have permission to go out and seek it, do what it takes to get it. And this is what real estate can do for you, because this is what real estate did for us. And
this is where we came from, right?
Right.
And so over the next 5 years, I just feel like we will also expand on that impact and the purpose that drives us to help more people through education. We're talking about a boot camp, right? That we will be announcing later down the line.
Wow, he just put it out there.
I'm manifesting.
He
but
just put that out there. But yeah, it's something we've been, from the small following that we have, we appreciate those people so much. And I think that our growth is slow but steady, but it's with the right kind of people, you know? And I think that's why we love it so much. But from that our tribe, the concept of like mentorship and teaching has been brought up to us so many times. And I think we were just so busy that we kept pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off. But I think you and I now, over the next, in 2023, we're not going to push it off anymore.
Right.
We're going to roll out with it, make tweaks, and hope that it helps more people, because there is something unique about doing real estate in Hawaii. And that's what we specialize in, and that's what we can help people with,
I don't want to sound crazy, but we really want to put Hawaii on the map. And we're two local nobodies that were born and raised here, that
a little bit cuckoo,
maybe a little crazy. Yeah, definitely made some crazy decisions, but we want to share that journey and the possibilities that come along with real estate and doing real estate and deciding to use real estate as your vehicle with everybody. You know what I mean? And so 5 years, more impact and more purpose.
Yeah, so an educational platform for sure. Definitely multifamily real estate. I think we're going to obviously double down on our podcast and going a little virtual with it.
Yeah, we're going to do a virtual series.
A virtual series.
Sam sing.
A little virtual series. And it's just finding the right name. So if you guys have a cool Dills and Aloha blank series for like doing Zoom podcasts, like let us know. Because I think that's the struggle right now, is coming out with a name that feels good and feels right.
Yeah.
It always has to feel good and feel right for us.
Right. Yeah. So.
But yeah, that's the grassroots story. That's where we came from. That's who we are as humans. And I'm sure if we got asked more questions, we could answer, in more detail and stuff like that. But maybe we'll do a live or something.
Yeah, we can do it live. But our hope is that somebody out there resonates with this. And yeah, I mean, I'm open. We're open books. Like we're down to talk story, about pretty much anything that we just shared, and hope that you guys take this and do whatever the hell you want with it. But we love you guys, and I know we don't have a huge following, but we appreciate every single person that watches these freaking things where we're like having therapy sessions. And
if you ever want to come have a therapy session, just let us know.
Let's go.
I am a licensed counselor.
Yeah. I mean, I counseled too.
That's so funny.
That is really cool.
Like, subscribe, follow if you want to see more. And that was our story on how we went from jail to millionaire.
Let's go.
Time to get paid, blow. Time to get paid. Time to get paid, blow up like I'm blowing up.